So now let's get to Sencha Touch framework. First of all, why we choose this framework? I mean, there are a lot of them that go to like jQuery Mobile and Titanium and Prototype and also. We chose Sencha Touch framework because we feel that it's the most complete one from all of them, and it does support cross-browser support from Android to Safari and BlackBerry also. And the best part is that it's object-oriented programming, which also gives us more flexibility when we work with Sencha Touch. And to get into it, I'm going to give you some basics in the slideshow, then we're going to move to a live session when we're going to type some code there and see if we can actually build an application in a few minutes. The fundamentals for Sencha Touch frameworks are the classes. Usually JavaScript doesn't have classes as a native support, but Sencha Touch brings a way that gives us the feeling we're working with classes. And the next is the MVC, Model View Controller, which most of us should know. Live session, when we're going to do the small demo. Sencha Touch class system, we have a small cake here. The class that it's actually the small cake represents the class system, which is at the bottom. So we have the event system that listens for widgets, layouts, and data packages. Now our application-specific code. When you're going to type, you're actually going to see how it's divided, and it's quite easy to understand the part where we have the widgets, where we have the data packages, and how the event system actually listens to all of this. It has a benefit. For example, if we use the jQuery, when we want to add a listener to a small object, and when we tap it, we first have to know that that object is created so we can append the event. Well, in Sencha Touch, you can actually do it, you can add the event before the element is created, because it will have an observatory. So every time when you create a new object, you try to see if this object might have some events to it, and it will append them there. Moving deeper into the class, the learning curve. In order to get used to Sencha, you must start somewhere. So the first one is you have to start learning. The best part we found in Sencha is that it has a very vast documentation, and for each element, for each tag name, everything, you just type in their website and you find documentation for it. It's very familiar. Those that work with jQuery or have some basics of JavaScript, they'll quickly get used to it. It's when you develop it, you can actually debug it. You can use the web console, and it will give you a lot of information when you develop. You can also build testable modules, when you can actually have a look like when the product is final, but also get feedback from it. And the deploy, which has automatic dependency resolution. This means all your files, you don't have to write into your index file, you don't have to write script, include anything. It will automatically understand what files you need, and it will automatically load them as a package. So you can easily deploy it to iOS, Android, or just as a web app. Coding convention. It's quite easy to understand, and we're going to use it often. We have the namespace, which will actually be the name of our application. And then the group, which will represent a folder that we store our file, and the class name. The rules are one class per file, and the file name must match the class name. So if you have a class name, call it get apples, your file has to have the same name with the same case. As an example, we have ext. I highlighted the ext because I wanted to explain, every time you're going to use that word, it's when we're referring to the Sencha framework, the Sencha SDK folder. We're going to use, for example, our app name, and then continue with our classes controllers, or we can use the ext and continue to the classes and controllers related to the Sencha. So as an example, we have ext chart label, and we can actually find it in folder ext chart labels.js. This is with a subgroup. Have it again. data router XML. How we define a class? It's quite simple. We're going to use the word define. Again, we are referring to the Sencha, ext define. And we're going to give our namespace the folder, the group, and the class name. And inside of it, just as an object, we're going to add our methods to the class. To instantiate it, we just say ext create, and it can automatically then make calls to our inner functions. Yes?
The ext is referring to the Sencha object, or it's the ext is JavaScript library? Because there is a JavaScript library.
Yeah, Sencha Touch is based on the ext, so they keep that part. So they have it as a. It's actually developed by them, so they move forward, and from the ext they just call it Sencha. Okay. The thing is, they want to keep the ext as a whole name project when you develop web applications and not related to device where you have touch events and all those stuff. And that's why when we say ext, we're actually referring to Sencha. Okay, it's like a shortcut, we can call it.
Okay, thank you.
What's your name?
Dennis.
Thank you. Yes, for your intervention. And have a gift.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward. Sencha MVC, model view controller. It's also found in .NET, C#, some of your work. Rarely in PHP. Some of Zen framework, I think it uses MVC. They want to do this way because it has some benefits. One, that you keep the logic out of your views. Then you can have the teamwork. You do a controller, I do a view, for example. It's organized, it's best practice, follow it. And you can also identify better where you have errors. You could just go to the class name and you fix it. And you also have spaghetti avoided. Another bonus, I say, that Sencha framework has to offer is that it's code unification. I mean, it's really a very rare case where you're actually going to write HTML code, HTML tags, or most of them you're going to write as a list template, which I'm going to show you later. Also, even the CSS part, you're actually going to write in SAS, synthetically custom style sheet, where you're actually going to write functions to generate code for you. Now let's explain the MVC part. So we have the model that loads and manages the application data. You can see as an example, it looks like an SQL, you have a schema to it, and the data that you're going to append to based on the fields. What's interesting, you can send to the model a lot of data, it has a lot of fields, and it will only select only the fields that you declare. Moving forward, the view manages and displays user information. Those are actually the buttons, the forms, the lists, and so on. Controller, listening for input from the user. You can actually imagine a controller. When the user presses something, the controller responds, updates the view, or makes some synchronization actions. The file structure, similar like this. We have the SDK folder where our Sencha type will be. We're going to work in the app folder where you have the controller, the model, and another two folders that I'm going to explain when I'm going to work. One of them, the store, it's, you can imagine it like a warehouse. We're going to store temporary information or information you're going to receive from other servers. We just store it there. And the view folder where we're going to design our layout. So now we're going to move to the live session. Let's hope it's not going to turn out into a disaster.
One question. What about the performance? When it's a lot of JavaScript on the device that it's not very performant? Well, jQuery Mobile, I had a lot of issues with loading time, with all the redundant code that is loaded on the page. Compare it with jQuery Mobile, why Sencha is...
The performance, that was their first task when they started doing Sencha Touch. So for every version they did, they released more improvements. what they did, they have this, and the end you have a compiler that it's going to compact all your code. It's going to remove all the other things you don't need and you actually don't use. And it has a way when you create elements in the object, it will actually define all the functions, all the all the aspect things, so that the browser shouldn't think the why. There's nothing like in percent. You actually say percent, but it will automatically calculate Sencha and it will do that for you. And a nice feature that just came out is when you create list elements and you start swiping, it will actually take from the bottom and it will put it on top, just like the native app do. That's just the new version. And as a performance, I can say in Android it's quite low. It's not. It doesn't give you the feeling of a native app, but if we do a test on an iPad or an iPhone, it runs quite smooth. We have the same visuals in both of them, only the performance it still lags. So that's something we can wish from the devices to have more when we use the WebKit framework. Thank you. What's your name?
Fla.
This is for you. Don't worry, I have more gifts there.